1 minute.
All right. Welcome everyone to our Columbus user group November session. This is happening after the symposium. We have today Sebastian Winter, one of the leading subject matter expert on XM Cloud. We are fortunate to have him. We invited him today to give the presentation on XM Cloud. We heard him in symposium. We thought that this is a great topic for us to present to the larger group. And he is here today going to talk about XM Cloud. We'll keep like last 15 minutes for question. I imagine that there will be many questions at the end. So Sebastian is here. He is from Germany, Düsseldorf. And thanks, Sebastian, to take our invitation and doing this talk. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Right, yeah, so at Symposium, probably not everyone has been had the chance to be there, but yeah, it has been announced that XM Cloud is now generally available. Along with some other announcements, I will mention those just to repeat that. But yeah, let's directly go into understanding on what XM Cloud actually is, and yeah, getting a feeling for what is there. Madri already introduced me. So my name is Sebastian. I'm a developer advocate at Sitecore. So I'm within the technical marketing team to support the developers with all the new stuff coming up, and therefore also coming to this user group, for example, to introduce XM Cloud to you. In general, I have 20 years of IT experience, and I'm working with the product of Sitecore since 8 years, and three and a half years ago I joined Sitecore. I've been an MVP before, and yeah, if you like, you can just follow me on Twitter. I'm active there to share also latest stuff on XM Cloud, but also new products coming up. Yeah. So today, I'd like to introduce you to the composable product stack that Sitecore has announced, or that is partially also already available. And of course, our topic for today will be primarily XM Cloud. So let's have a look on what that actually means. What is XM Cloud? And then connected to XM Cloud, you will also get to know the new Sitecore Cloud portal. And then we have a look on what tooling XM Cloud actually provides, deployment-wise, build-wise, but also a command line interface plugin to the Sitecore CLI. Yeah, and I believe a lot of you will or are actually developers. So we want to see how to actually get started with XM Cloud. And then have a little dive into the tools that come with XM Cloud that are new to XM Cloud, like Pages, for example. We have a small comparison on XM Cloud and XM, just to see how they differentiate and how that fits. And we also have a little look into the roadmap, what's up next. Yeah, let's just get started, I would say. We will have questions at the end. So yeah, let's just run not only through the slides, we also see demos, but let's go through the content and then see how I can answer your questions. Right, so Sitecore has introduced its composable stack, and what that means is that Sitecore adds a complete new product range to the existing portfolio. So in the past, we knew we had the Experience Manager, we had the Experience Platform, and we had Experience Commerce. But now we have a lot of SaaS-based products, so software as a service offerings, and we divide those into 3 different clouds just to get an understanding on where they live. So on the one hand, we have the Content Cloud, That's also where XM Cloud is located. But along in the Content Cloud, you see that here on the screen with the purple hexagons. So there is Content Hub, the DAM, but also Content Hub Operations. But along with that, there are 2 new announcements from Symposium, which is Sitecore Search. And along with that, a new content management, headless content management system, which is Content Hub 1. On the other hand, we have the Engagement Cloud with products like Send and CDP and Personalize, but also a new announcement of Sitecore Connect, which is a product to connect basically all, connect into third-party applications. And then we have the Commerce Cloud, which consists of Order Cloud, and in addition to that, which is then Discover. So we will primarily deal with XM Cloud today, right? So that's why we are here. But just to give you context on where XM Cloud is currently located and how the whole product landscape currently looks at Sitecore. So let's start from a higher level to introduce XM Cloud, and let's start just from a marketing level on how XM Cloud is actually promoted. So yeah, XM Cloud is seen as the next generation visual authoring tool. So it provides new authoring capabilities. What that means is new tools are introduced. So one is named Pages, for example, but there are also others named Sites or Components or Explorer. And we will dive into those also in a while. So you can drag and drop, and you might know that already if you've used SXA before. There used to be the toolbox in Experience Editor, which you've got only when you use SXA. So you can drag and drop components onto your canvas, which is a very good experience for your marketers in authors. And this is now also out of the box available in the Pages editor. XM Cloud also brings personalization and testing capabilities. So what does this mean? We have an embedded personalization engine in XM Cloud, where we can do session-based personalization. What's not mentioned here, but also available, is embedded analytics. So we have, let's say, a higher level of analytics embedded in XM Cloud. And already mentioned here is the A/B testing part, which is not yet released, but yeah, will soon come. So with that, we have definitely more features than we used to have with XM. But yeah, XM Cloud comes with a lot. And of course, XM Cloud is a headless product. It's Jamstack ready, and it's especially Jamstack ready for enterprise purposes. So yeah, let's actually see how that feels. We will talk about XM Cloud in a moment, also more from a theoretical side, but I also would like to show you how that actually feels and how it actually looks like, not just screenshots, but directly go into the product. And as a few things take time, I will directly start with my first demo now and then explain maybe in depth a few things later. So let me quickly go into the Cloud Portal. Let's start here. So what you should be able to see now is my browser, and I've logged in currently to the new Cloud Portal. The first question usually that comes is, how can I get access? Now, what you need in order to get access to that tooling is a subscription. So you need to have a subscription with Sitecore to actually get that, to get access. Now, what you can do from here is you can manage projects, you can administer your users and also the access roles. You can access all your apps that you currently connect. And the idea of the Sitecore Cloud Portal is that you have one place where your journey as a developer, but also as an author starts, where you can access all your marketing tools from the Sitecore stack, but in future also from other vendors. So you will have all your toolings available here. That's the idea. Now, what we will do now is we start from the very beginning, and what we will do is we will set up a new environment just from scratch with the demo project, so that you also see how easy it is to actually get started and get your first project started, basically. So what we will do is we will create a new project, and therefore we will start from here into XM Cloud, or being more precise, into the XM Cloud deployer. So if I click on that, you can see by the URL that I've moved into a different tool. So I'm now not in portal.sitecorecloud.io, but deploy.sitecorecloud.io. However, it is very seamless, so you can barely see that you're actually moving between different applications. And you can see that I'm now in the XM Cloud deployer. And what I want to do is I want to create a new project. So I will explain also in more depth what that means, but let's just get the demo started here. So I want to create a new project, and I get the choice to start it from a starter template, which I recommend. If you've never touched it before, just start with something, but you can obviously also start from your own code base. Now I will, as I said, I will use the starter template for now, which is currently just the XM Cloud Foundation template. There will be more in the future, and you will also be able to add your own. But yeah, let's start with something, as I said. So I need to give my project then a name, and I can name that Columbus, Sitecore User Group Columbus. Yeah, fine. Next. Now, my project connects to a GitHub solution. Inbuilt, as you can see, within that wizard or within that process, I can only connect a GitHub account. You can also deploy from any other source repository that you might be using, just not within that process. But I also mentioned the command line interface already. I will show that in more detail. But from there, you can deploy from any source repository, basically. But let's start with GitHub here. Say next. And if you haven't got connected your GitHub account, you click here on creating a new GitHub connection. Important to say is that you require, so you're getting asked if you want to share just one project, or if you want to share your whole account, meaning with all your projects. You need to click that you want to share all your projects, because this process is going to copy a new solution into your GitHub account, and therefore it needs to have the according access rights. Now, in my case, I have connected my GitHub account already, so I'm selecting that one. It's called Love Sitecore, just as my Twitter handle, and click on Next, and give the repository a name. So I will also name that Columbus. Columbus. I hope that's fine. Next. Right, and last but not least, I need to create an environment name. I will also name that Columbus. And I can say if this is actually a productive environment or a non-productive environment. If I would select that this is a productive environment, there are certain SLAs connected to that. But in my case, it's just a demo environment for the sake of that user group. So I will just say no. I can also directly select if I want to trigger a deployment on a commit to a branch. So that means so as I said, the solution is now copied over to my GitHub account once I start the whole process. And if I'm doing a commit on that solution later on, this triggers another deployment into my XM Cloud instance. So I will say yes, so that this will happen and basically start the deployment. Now that can take up to maybe 10 to 15 minutes at the moment. And we will directly jump into the logs. So let's see, right. So what we can see here is now the ongoing deployment that I just started. I can cancel it, but also I get the logs on what's actually happening. So on the one hand, the provisioning of the environment started at the same time like the build. So the build is the build of my solution, and the provisioning is the provisioning of the environment, meaning provisioning all the instances that I currently need to run XM Cloud. So this goes in parallel. Once this is done, the deployment will start. And then once the deployment is finished, we are able to access our environment. However, there are certain post actions that will be done afterwards. And I would say let's leave it like that, and let's not wait 15 minutes until it's done, and jump back to the slides. Yeah, let's have a deeper look on, or a better overview on what XM Cloud actually is. So in general, XM Cloud is a headless software as a service content management system. It has a headless architecture, which means it delivers content through an API. And but along with that, and especially compared to other headless competitors, it provides enterprise features such as layouting capabilities that we also know from XM or XP. So we have the ability to work on the content in a what you see is what you get way. In its basis, we have an XM instance, which has been re-architected for cloud and software as a service purposes. We have build and deployment tooling, which we already use with the deploy app that you've just seen. The content is delivered headlessly through a GraphQL endpoint on the edge. And edge is basically our delivery layer that can be seen as a CDN. So it's a geographically distributed delivery layer, which we have as a publishing target from our content management instance. And any of our front ends, so any of our rendering apps that we host outside of XM Cloud can connect now to this GraphQL endpoint on the edge and pull the content and then build out the experiences that we want to build. So that's basically the structure of XM Cloud. So everything you see here in the blue or purple dotted lines, that's what you get with XM Cloud. So what you can also see here is the Sitecore Cloud portal that we've also just seen to start the whole process. And we have a so-called editing host, which is at the end, it's a node server or a node rendering host that helps us that helps us using Experience Editor and Pages right from the installation. By saying that, it only works like that with JavaScript-based heads. If you're going to use, for example, .NET Core, you can do that. That's not a big thing to change that, but you need to reconfigure your rendering host in XM Cloud or in the CM instance to use your .NET Core rendering host instead of the delivered editing host. The examples that you will see will be Next.js, and I will at the end also deploy to Vercel. However, that doesn't mean that you have to use it. I mean, there are reasons why you could use it, and there are also reasons why I have used it. But you can also use Vue or Angular or React or .NET Core, right? And you can use, you don't have to deploy to Vercel or use that as your application hosting provider, but you can also use other vendors. And just mentioning a few here, just to make that clear. Sorry. So summarizing the benefits of, or the advantages of XM Cloud. So we have a SaaS product, a software as a service solution that doesn't have any hosting efforts on your side, right? So you don't need to take care about the different tiers for the content management. You will get continuous updates, and maybe fun fact, when I did my symposium presentation, I did that around lunchtime. And then once I saw another presentation about XM Cloud done by Andy Cohen, it has already changed. So my presentation was already old a few hours later, right? So there are constant upgrades or updates done by the XM Cloud team, sometimes once a day or even twice a day. It could happen basically any time. That are small updates. It's not like a major update or anything, but it's done by us. You don't have to care for it. There is the promise to not deliver any breaking changes so that your application gets affected. So yeah, one of the biggest, or one of the big business cases, I would say, not to have any updates anymore. You still have the freedom to customize your content management. and for sure to serialize, so synchronize your items into your source repository or towards your environments. We have seen the deployment tools, at least the deploy app so far. There is also the CLI, you will see that as well. We have already mentioned that what you see is what you get, editing tools that you get along with it, pages, components, well, experience editor as a known old friend. We have the GraphQL headless delivery through the GraphQL endpoint. We have JSS and headless SXA included, so there's no extra licensing for those two modules. We have embedded personalization, embedded analytics, and also coming the embedded A/B testing. And along with the Sitecore Cloud Portal, we have unified identity. So we have a single sign-on experience across all our composable stack. So we need to log in just once, and we can use that across our products. And you will see that once you've logged into the portal, you don't have to log in again when you're using the CLI, for example, and need to synchronize items. So that's already the single sign-on solution. So we've seen the new Sitecore Cloud Portal, which I said it's there for managing the composable DXP stack. So all of the apps will appear in that cloud portal, and you have a centralized user collaboration. So you can invite people to your organization. You can manage the access rights, and we've seen that already, right? But yeah, once you have subscribed, you will be part of an organization, and you can see the organization up there. As a partner, you might be a member of several organizations, and there is a solution to that, to just switch between your organizations within the same tool. So you can easily manage several accounts or several organizations within one app. We can manage the project. That's what we also started to create a new project and environment, and we can manage our apps, and we can manage all our users, team members, invite new team members, giving the access rights, and so on. Not to forget about, we have some useful help here on the right side, and we even have the ability to create support cases directly from here. So yeah, it's a central point to basically manage everything about our Sitecore composable stack. I used a few terms now. I used organization and project and environment, and just to give an understanding on what that means and also how this is connected to each other. So starting from the top here, I mentioned organization, and I also mentioned that this is connected to a subscription. So if you want to get access to the cloud portal, you need a subscription, and this will be connected to a certain organization. So that's your whole starting point. Now, the next layer is, in terms of XM Cloud, it is projects. And a project can be seen as, or a project refers to a certain solution, right? So if you have the need to deploy different solutions, then this would go into different projects. Or if you really want to separate, like if you have different organizations that you need to serve, in terms of it's one customer or one client, but they have maybe several entities, like several independent business units. So that is then also a good differentiator to have several projects. Now, within a project, you can have several environments, meaning you can have a dev environment or QA environment or production environment. So that goes all under the project. And for each environment represents a Sitecore CM instance, basically, with all the tiers that you've seen on the slides before. So that means each environment hosts a Sitecore instance, and Sitecore is still multi-site, multi-tenancy capable, right? So you don't need to differentiate different sites by different projects. So that's not necessary. Okay, next demos. Let's have a look on how far we are with the deployment. And yeah, that looks actually good. So it was even way faster than I expected. You can see the times here always on the right side. So we see that provisioning and build was actually completed in in 3 or 4 minutes because they ran in parallel, and another 4 minutes for the deployment. Now, the post actions are running, which is, as you can see, it's re-indexing all our content, but we can directly jump into the Launchpad, which is now called Dashboard. So I think this has to be replaced, the naming. So let's see what we got. When starting up for the first time, there's always or still a slight delay.
So Sebastian, is
Yeah.
it a right time to ask a question maybe? Or this is coming up?
It's coming up now. I would like to continue, not to run out of time.
Okay, that's fine.
So if you could note down your question, we can definitely come
No,
back.
I was just thinking if we need to, we can fill up this time.
Okay. No, it wasn't so long, I would say. Okay, let's just continue. So the dashboard looks pretty familiar, I think, compared to the Launchpad. So we have still content editor, we have a media library. So all the tools we know from Sitecore XM. We also have Experience Editor. However, we also have now access to the new tooling, which is Pages, Components, and the Explorer. And you can see here on the top that we have some tools available, like Sites and Settings. Now let's jump into Sites, and that offers us the possibility to directly create a new site. And yeah, let's just do that. So we can choose from a template. So either we can use a completely empty site or a basic site. As we want to have some content just to play around with, I will start with the basic site and just choose this one. And now I have to use a site name. So let's also call that Columbus. If we would have configured several languages, as we know from Sitecore in the system settings or system languages, we would have the option to create more languages. Now, as we start fresh, we only have English available, but for the demo case, that should be fine. By the way, that might look familiar to the process that you also probably have seen with SXA before. So let's create the website. It says it takes up to 2 minutes. Also here, let's not waste time on watching that being created, and just jump back into the slides and have a look on the deploy app and the CLI that we have partially seen already. So the deploy app helps us to manage our projects, to manage our environments, but also start deployments or redeploy things and enter the logs, for example, right? From here, as we did it already, we can create new sites and basically see what environments we have. Like in this case, for example, we have built already a staging, prod, and development environment, and we can see what's been going on those environments, what deployment has been done, and if they are succeeded or not. We've also already seen that, and this is already an older screenshot, even though XM Cloud is not that old, but you see that the post actions or post deployment actions are not yet in that screenshot. So that's how you can see how quickly it's evolving, even that we can't keep up our presentations here. But as we've seen, so the deployment was started here, and we get an indication if that was successful or not. And once we're done with it, we can enter then the Launchpad or the dashboard to do further content management. Whatever we can do with the deploy app, we also can do with the CLI, the Sitecore Cloud CLI. So the XM Cloud CLI is basically a plugin to the already existing Sitecore CLI, which we used for content serialization, for example. But it extends it with all the functionality that you need to, again, manage your projects, manage your environments, or run deployments. Or if you want to delete an environment, everything, you can do that from the deploy app, but you can also do that from the CLI. Now, why is that important? I mentioned already one case in the beginning. So currently, through the deploy app, we only support GitHub as a source repository. Now, if you're working with something different, which might be obviously the case, then you can definitely use that and deploy through the CLI. Another reason could be that you want to have another deployment pipeline or build tooling, not the one that's offered. So wherever you need some automation or wherever you want to build something that's not coming out of the box, you can still refer to the CLI and use that in your deployment process to deploy, build environments, whatever you need, right? So that's a perfect candidate to fill up gaps on the one hand, but mostly for automating things that do not come out of the box yet. For example, with the UIs or with the apps that we've seen. Great. Another demo. Let's see if our site is ready. Yes. So we have our Sitecore User Group Columbus site, and let's have a look into that site. So if we click on that, we directly land in Pages, which is the new editing tool, right? It looks similar to Horizon, but it's not Horizon, and it comes with more features. But we will talk about Pages in a bit. So let's go back to the dashboard for now, and go back into the tooling. What we need to do is, I want to deploy now the website to Vercel, and therefore I also need to publish the content, because the content needs to be available on Edge so that the deploy app can actually access the content and display it. Now, there is a manual way how to achieve that. However, also this has been improved. And if we go back to the deploy app, go to home, right? And Sitecore User Group Columbus. Let me just check. Right. So just going back for the moment. So I am in the XM Cloud deploy app right now. And what that offers here on this configuration or settings screen is we can enable experimental features. That means there are features enabled, or you can enable features that are not yet released. Be aware they're also not yet supported. However, they can come handy. And this is one of the features I really like, and that was also one of the features that was introduced within the 3 hours of my presentation at Symposium and the presentation that came after me. So what I can see here is that for my environment, Sitecore User Group Columbus, I have the ability to publish from here. So I can do that still from Content Editor. I can do that from Pages, but I also can do it straight from the deploy app. And it tells me how far it is with the publishing. And as I don't want to wait for the publishing, because it's now publishing the whole site for the very first time, I also, in the meantime, want to set up my host. So I want to deploy everything to Vercel, and I can click here on the hosting option to set up my host for the Columbus site. So let's do that. And also here I have to provide a project name, which is the Vercel project name. And you can see, as I've used always Sitecore User Group Columbus for project, environment, and site, it's giving me a strange suggestion on how to name that. But let's shorten that for now as a project name. Right. I have already an account with Vercel. If you don't have one, you can create a free account, like a free private account. So that's the installation I have right now. And I think that should be fine. So let's save it and get it started. While that runs, I already get a host for it. It's not yet deployed for sure. Two things that I wanted to show you. On the one hand, if we take a look at my GitHub account and on my repositories, you can on the one hand see that the Columbus repository has been created 20 minutes ago. That's the one we created together basically. And if I take a look into that, yeah, you basically have everything that you need to get started. You have your Docker Compose files to run things locally. We will talk about that in a minute. But you also have the sources for your rendering app. So it's called SXA Starter. And in here you have your Next.js rendering app with everything that you basically need. So you have also the out-of-the-box components that come with SXA or with headless SXA. It's not that many anymore, like it used to be with SXA, but you have great examples on how, well, you can still reuse them, you can still adjust them, but you have great examples how to easily create just new ones based on different data source behaviors, or the linked list that uses sub-items, for example, and proper management within pages. So great example components, I would say, that you can take a look at. And if you have worked with SXA, probably Promo is one of the most famous that you've stumbled upon. In here, you also find an example on how to implement rendering variants with headless SXA, right? So you can just implement two variations, give it a name like default or with text, and then create the according rendering variant items that reference this code piece here. So very useful. Let me just jump back for the moment. And let's have a look on our Vercel deployment. So what we can see here is it has created a new project, the Zook Columbus project. And yeah, it looks like it's ready. So we can actually call our website visit. Right, so we have a live website with demo content, but it's publicly available, and with talking around it after 35 minutes, we have all that set up. Great, but yeah, that's just a sample project, right? And you want to know how to get actually started for your customer projects. So let's go back to slides. So if you as developers want to get started with XM Cloud, I recommend using one of the starter kits, because you get definitely the whole project structure, you get all the tooling, all the configuration around it that you would have to build from scratch. So I highly recommend using that as a basis. And then you have basically two modes that you can work and interact as a developer. So you have a so-called edge mode, and you have a mode we call, let's say, fully local. Let's have a look on what that means in detail. Now, if we take a look at the edge mode, that means you just spin up a local node server, which hosts your rendering app, and you connect that rendering app to your local, to your XM Cloud instance. So it communicates with the edge or with the GraphQL endpoint of your edge delivery layer. I would say that comes very handy if you focus on developing your rendering app, so the front end of your whole application. You can still deploy to your XM Cloud instance using the CLI or using the deploy app for sure. You can also serialize your items. However, whomever has worked with a shared environment before, like if you have multiple developers working on one shared environment, it might be hard to cherry pick, for example, templates or other items that you have created and that should be shipped with your feature that you're currently developing on. So that's why I say, if you're working or if you're focusing on developing your rendering app, that's a perfect mode, and that's potentially the way to go for front-end developers. As you also only just have a local node server that works also on the Mac. So this issue should be solved as well, right? Now, if we take a look on the fully local mode, that means you spin up an XM Cloud instance completely local using Docker containers, and that's why you also use then the Docker Compose files that I showed earlier. Then you have really a dedicated environment for yourself. However, this is a limited environment. We still have a Sitecore CM instance, so the XM Cloud CM instance, which uses Solr as an internal content search, and it still has a SQL Server database in there to host the master and the core database. And it brings an editing host, which is then a rendering host to be used for Experience Editor and Pages. Now, Pages is not available in that context because Pages is a SaaS application on its own, which is not delivered within your local setup. This way, you can work independently on crafting or modeling your content using templates. You can do customizations on the CM instance without interfering with anyone else, and then having your feature branches completely clean and deploy them through the environments where you want to deploy it. So that's probably the setup that you want to go as a former Sitecore developer or XMXP developer or a backend developer, right? Great. Right. So running everything local works like that. So you just go to your GitHub account and get your repository cloned to your local, which I did before. So let me just bring up my editor here. So I've done that before because it takes a while when you spin up everything to pull all the base images, the Docker base images, and to download everything. So that's why I have done that before, not to waste any time here. But everything you need to do is clearly described in the README file of your cloned repository, right? So what you need to do is you need to run an init PowerShell script passing the parameters to provide your the path to your Sitecore license file, as well as an admin password for your Sitecore instance, which is probably B. And then the next thing you would do is, so this process creates the .env file, which hosts all your environment variables. And then you would start the whole containers using the up script. And this pulls then all the base images, which could take a while. Now, let me just see, go back here. I hope it's big enough. So what you can do here, let me just clear that out. So if we take a look on what has been started locally, we can see we have traffic, we have our rendering host, we have the CM instance, we have Solar, we have our SQL. Well, no, sorry, that's the SQL server, and that's the Solar instance. So the things that you have seen in the chart before, this is what runs now locally on my machine, and I could do changes, but I see I'm running a bit out of time, so I will leave that for now. But you can then run your environment locally. Let me quickly go here. Right. So just to prove, I have now here my content editor. As you can see, it's running on XM Cloud CM localhost. So that's my CM instance of XM Cloud on my local machine. I still have Experience Editor, which is using then the editing host to display basically my headless application, and I can do now instant changes. Now, what you recognize here is the site that I just created is only available on XM Cloud. It hasn't been serialized down into my source repository. So that would be the next step to do in order to continue the local development, right? So this is a blank, fresh CM instance of XM Cloud. So my topic at Symposium was to basically like we as former, let's say, backend Sitecore XP XM developers or .NET C# .NET developers, it seems like in the headless world of XM Cloud, there's not much we can do, which is actually not true. And if you take a look, well, I mean, I told you I'm since 20 years in IT, and I started even with Oracle database development, which is something completely different to what I do now. And I lately, like in the middle of this year, I transitioned into a headless development with XM Cloud. So IT and development, software development is always kind of a changing field. And if you have a look on all the things I mentioned today, right? So there's still SXA, there's still JSS. So that's not something new. It has been around since a while. We talk about headless development, which is also not necessarily new. We are working with containers that have been introduced with Sitecore 10. We are working with Edge, which is also introduced with some of the later releases of Sitecore. We have Sitecore Serialize, and we have still a Sitecore XM or Sitecore CM instance, which we know a lot about. So you might recognize now that you know already a lot, and you might also recognize that you probably lack some knowledge in certain areas, and that's probably where you need to ramp up then. But it's not all, I believe, right? So there's a lot that you have dealt with before, and all of that you will find in XM Cloud. So if you ramp up in those areas that you haven't worked before, just take a look into those, and that will help you. Now, jumping into the browser for a moment, in the developer portal, we have provided you with certain material that you can find an easier start. So on the one hand, let me try to find it. Should be under Learn, and then XM Cloud Introduction. So here, for example, you have an article explaining how to get started with XM Cloud, and exactly what I just mentioned. So if you scroll down, so that's a similar image like the one you just saw, right? And if you scroll down, you find a lot of links that I've used to learn actually working with XM Cloud. So there is already material out there about XM Cloud itself, but there is also material out there on the tooling, on containers, on headless itself, on Sitecore Serialize, on working with Edge, about SXA. So if you lack some knowledge in a certain area, here you find a good start from my perspective to dive into a topic and then see what you're missing. Now, let's see, I'm running out of time a bit. There is Sitecore Pages. Yeah, let's quickly talk about Sitecore Pages, and then I would say let's jump into the Q&A part. So Sitecore Pages is the new editing tool that you get with XM Cloud, and it is exclusive to XM Cloud. You can switch between your sites. I hope you can see my arrow, my cursor. Or let's directly jump into the demo, right? So why should I show a screenshot if I can have a working environment? Where do I have it? Not this one. There we go. Pages. Here we go. So one thing I like about, and that's maybe a small thing, but it has autosave, right? I do not have to save my changes anymore. They are saved for me. So first great thing, and we got that feedback from authors and marketers. So we listened. Here we go. You can also directly maintain your content in different viewports. So if you really want to go mobile first, that's the way to go, right? So you can see your content in how it looks on a mobile phone. You can rotate that content to see how it looks. Then you can go for a tablet, rotate again, or go back to your desktop view. You have the ability to manage your pages, and you can also directly access the content of the page, which is, oh, I thought it's here. Anyway, no, here it is, right. So here I have directly my page template to access all the fields that maybe are not exposed in the pages. What you see is what you get editing experience. So I can manage them from here, right? Then I have my components. In this case, that's the out-of-the-box components that I can drag and drop onto the screen. So if I want to add a new promo, you can easily see, yeah, I can just do that. And you can for sure add your own components. What else? If I take, for sure I can do inline editing, no question on that. And what I also get is I have access to the rendering parameters. So for example, I can change the styling, and I have some great new controls to manage that with different spacing, to align my content, or to just attach a new CSS class to my promo component, which leads to another visual appearance. But I can also, let me just see, I can also switch in the advanced styling. I can switch my variant if I have several variants available. So all of that I have on the right side available for my editing experience. Okay, I would say let's leave the rest of the time for questions. Where's my slide deck? So, right. Yeah, I would say I open up for questions now. Sorry.
Yeah, so thanks for, there is so much content. I mean, a lot of things. So I would actually, as a organizer, I will give some, like, chance to the audience first to ask the questions. So if you have any questions, please ask at this time.
Hey, hi,
All right.
Madhuri. Navjot here.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
I've got a couple of them actually. So now the individual projects that we have, Sebastian, that can include, as you said, multiple sites. So one project could, house, let's say, 10 to 15 sites like we used to manage in regular Sitecore, right?
Right.
And then is the assumption that it'll be, I mean, if we create a set of components which are common and templates which are common, they can be shared across those sites in that particular project.
Right. So that, I would say there can be two scenarios, right? So let's assume a scenario that we also had when we implemented our first site. So we got our experience from re-implementing the Sitecore user group conference sites. So there's one for the Australia, New Zealand, there's one for India, and there's one for the Europe region. And all of these sites are looking the same, it's just for different regions. So they have the same, they should have the same components, the same designs. So that's a perfect case where you would also in an MVC implementation reuse just your renderings and use them along with your application, right? In fact, we haven't done that for other reasons, but that would be a good case. And for sure, you wouldn't implement your components multiple times. So you can manage, like if you have a multi-site project and your customer is just rolling out your site to different countries or different markets, for example, then you don't have to do your components multiple times. So what you would do is you would have one rendering app, implement your components in there, and then deploy that either to several rendering hosts, like if you want to have each rendering host just hosting a dedicated site. But I think with Vercel, for example, not sure about the other hosting providers, you can also have multiple sites being served from one rendering host. You not necessarily have to scale out all your sites to a dedicated rendering host. Scenario B would be that you have sites that do not have much in common. So in there, you would rather go for a different implementation of your components, and you can see that in the repository. So the SUCON and MVP sites, we have open source. So you find that under the Sitecore GitHub as XM Cloud introduction repository. And we have, for example, even one site done in .NET Core, and it's hosted in the same solution like the SUCON sites, which is implemented using Next.js, for example. So in there, we have complete dedicated implementation of components. So that would be the second scenario. And I mean, in a real life scenario, I would even separate those into different solutions because they do not share anything. But we just wanted to prove that you can have a multi-site, multi-head application in one solution.
Sorry, I didn't get the second one. So you're saying we have, is that in .NET Core, the second approach?
You can. I mean, that's just, let's say, the odd case that we used, right? So our target was to have, we needed to migrate, or we wanted to migrate the SOCON sites and the MVP site into XM Cloud. That was a task, and the MVP site had been implemented headlessly before with using .NET Core, and the SOCON sites were on some older version of Sitecore XP. I'm not sure if they used SXA or not. So we chose to migrate just the MVP site as good as we could, putting the content into XM Cloud, but also reusing the implementation that we had in .NET Core. But then the SOCON sites were in Next.js. Sorry, they were like in MVC. So we re-implemented them using Next.js and then also using JSS and headless SXA. And we have all of that in one solution, and we deployed out to several rendering hosts. So the .NET Core stuff goes into Azure, right? And the Next.js sites go into Vercel. So that all works fine. Not sure if you would go in a real life example having different technologies in the same solution, but you can. I mean, that's just proven in our project.
Okay. And now in the case of now when we used to do headless with the XP previously, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could write custom renderings and we could sort of customize how the incoming requests need to be managed. Now, in case of XM Cloud, how can we sort of customize or let's say hook into any custom HTTP request to make any anything that is out of the ordinary? So let's say any incoming request needs to be hooked and needs to be passed into some specific requirement. Then how do we manage that?
Yeah. So I think one separation you have to make here. So the one thing is you have your CM instance and you can still customize whatever you need to customize for content authoring. So one question we usually get is, can we customize pipelines? Yes, you can, but it's only for the CM, right? Because there is no CD anymore. The delivery goes to Edge, and we don't have pipelines for Edge, for example. So and now coming to the other point that you are asking for. So our delivery layer is Edge, and we are delivering the content just through the GraphQL API. So the content is just there, and your request is handled with your content. With your rendering application. So so the request hits your rendering application first, or maybe a load balancer. But anyway, at the end, it hits your application, and the application needs to know how to process the request and what to query from the GraphQL endpoint, unless it's not just cached on that environment yet. Now, if you're using JSS, the whole querying on GraphQL is done for you, but there might be dedicated requirements where you say, well, I need to handle this in a very, very specific way. But this all you would then handle on the rendering app itself, and then query the GraphQL endpoint in a dedicated way. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, in a way. Yeah. So you do say that, and in that documentation that you mentioned, I can find how I can sort of extend the pipelines still on XM side, right? So that documentation is available.
Yes, but it's just the way that you did it before. If I quickly go back to that GitHub repository, so or even to code, and I can zoom in a bit. So for all the customizations I have regarding my CM instance, I have this platform folder, and in here you can embed, for example, new configurations, or you can patch your configurations and introduce new pipelines, and therefore also the implementations of processes that you will add to the pipelines, for example. So everything that comes into the platform folder is what gets deployed to your XM Cloud CM instance. So you have basically all the freedom that you had before with your CM instance. However, if we think of SaaS, the question is if we would go for, let's say, more for an approach to have a middleware that handles our CM customizations or integrations. But I mean, you don't have to. You can still go the way that you had before. It's an architectural questions on SaaS as such, I would say.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Great.
All right, thanks for the question. I think we are 2 minutes over, so I think we should stop here. Sebastian provided link to, showed the link to the documentation, as well as he is available in Slack. There is XM Cloud channel, so you can reach out to the community and ask further questions. So thanks for the presentation, Sebastian. It was a lot of content, really good presentation. Thanks for that. And thanks everyone for joining in today's session. Have a nice day. Thank you.
you.